There is growing uncertainty in Afghanistan after Taliban forces seized control. A senior Taliban official announced a nationwide amnesty and called for women to join the new government. But there is fear among Afghans as they wait to see what kind of government the Taliban plans to install. This comes as the airport in Kabul is open again, but only for military flights. This widely shared picture shows the inside of a U.S. Air Force plane that left Kabul on Sunday for Qatar. You can see more than 600 Afghans seated on the floor as they fled the country. CBS News' Natalie Brand reports from the White House.
The U.S. military has sent more troops to the airport in Kabul to ensure the safety of Americans trying to flee Afghanistan.
Throughout the night, 9 C-17s arrived, delivering equipment and approximately 1,000 troops. Additionally, 7 C-17s departed. These flights lifted approximately 700 to 800 passengers.
In a statement, a Taliban spokesperson claims foreign citizens in Kabul are not in danger.
When it comes to the Taliban, we are going to look for their actions rather than listen to their words.
President Biden forcefully defended his decision to withdraw from Afghanistan and says the U.S. military will remain just long enough to get Americans and our allies out of the country.
Time is of the essence, and we all share a sense of urgency here. But right now, the mission runs to 31st of August, and I won't begin to speculate what happens after that.
Former National Security Advisor to President Trump, H.R. McMaster, argues some American forces should have stayed to support Afghan allies.
They looked over their shoulders and said, who's got our back? And we said, not us. We're leaving.
The concern now is for future threats and the safety of the American homeland.
Most of Afghanistan is ungoverned space. That type of terrain is a potential haven for terrorist organizations, al-Qaeda and other groups.
Lawmakers, including Democratic Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Mark Warner, say they have questions for the administration about why the U.S. wasn't better prepared for a worst-case scenario. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
For more on this, I want to bring in Griff Witte. He is a national correspondent for The Washington Post and previously served as Kabul bureau chief and deputy foreign editor. Griff, welcome. So as a journalist who spent a significant time during your career reporting from Kabul, what's your reaction to what we've seen these past few days?
Well, it's certainly extraordinary. I first started reporting in Afghanistan in early 2002, very shortly after the Taliban fell. And at that point, there was this sense of jubilation, a sense that Kabul was really in springtime. It was a moment when the country had a rebirth. And people were talking about the previous 20 years of war in the past tense. They were saying, we had 20 years of war. We're done with that now. We can move on in peace. And here we are nearly 20 years later from that point, and we are right back to where we started, which is the Taliban in power, really having almost complete control or perhaps complete control over the country. The real question now is, who are the Taliban? Which version of this group are we going to get in power? And I think that's what we're beginning to see glimmers of, and that's what everyone should be watching for in the coming days.
Right. It's very interesting to sort of speculate on what might happen now in Afghanistan, because there seems to be sort of a PR wing of the Taliban that is eager to relay one message, but then there are reports that something else is really happening on the streets. So when all of this is sorted out, what do you think the future realistically looks like in Afghanistan?
Well, the future presented by the Taliban spokesman today in that rather extraordinary interview or press conference, rather, where this was someone who had been masked in previous media appearances. He had been an outlaw. Now he was conducting a press conference in front of 100+ journalists in Kabul. And the version of Afghanistan that he presented to the world was one of tolerance. He said that the new government is going to provide an amnesty to those who worked for the previous government. He said that Afghan interpreters who work for the United States have nothing to fear, that women's rights will be respected, that freedom of the press will be respected, which all, I think, goes to this idea that the Taliban have been pushing for a while, that they learned from their past tenure in Kabul. They learned from the 5 years they had before, which obviously was a complete disaster, not only for the country, but for the Taliban itself. and they are a different group now. Obviously, we are going to see whether any of that is true. The track record is pretty abysmal. This is a group that has a very long record of human rights abuses. And even though the spokesman said things that sound quite conciliatory, that sound quite humble, and sound as though the group is really interested in transforming itself, it's a group that has a number of different factions. It's a group where it's opaque as far as where the real power lies. And I think that we'll start to see how the Taliban actually governs as they put together a government.
Really good points. I want to ask you about women now, because, of course, when the Taliban ruled 20 years ago, women could not have jobs, go to school, or even leave their homes without a male relative. As you pointed out, the Taliban now seem to be making some PR moves to suggest they won't be quite as punishing toward women. A Taliban spokesperson was even recently interviewed on TV by a female presenter, for instance, and that's something that would have been unheard of in the previous iteration of the Taliban. But are these moves to be believed? What does the future really look like for women under the Taliban right now?
Well, the spokesman today talked about women's rights. He talked and significantly called on female journalists and invited their questions. And he said in response that to their questions about women's rights, that the Taliban will allow women to go to school, that it will allow women to work, that there are appropriate roles for women, that women are a valuable part of society. But he couched it all by saying, of course, everything has to be in alignment with Islamic law, of Sharia. And the Taliban's interpretation of Sharia is notoriously strict and absolute. And whether we're going to see the Taliban interpret its rules in a different way this time, I think is something that is going to be hugely important. Are they going to allow, perhaps they'll allow girls to go to primary school, but are they going to allow women to attend university and to continue their graduate studies? Are they going to allow women to have senior roles and very important roles in the government, in universities, in media? These are all essential questions, and they're ones where there were no clear answers today.
Right. But these sort of PR moves that seem to suggest, at the very least, the Taliban does understand that the eyes of the international community are watching them very closely right now. So it does seem to suggest that even if their intentions are, on the stricter side of Sharia law, as you said, that they might be cautious about it, or at least what they show to the world. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the Taliban was extraordinarily isolated the last time they governed Afghanistan. They ran the country between 1996 and 2001, and they had very, very few allies in the world. And the country was really suffered tremendously as a result. And I think that what you saw today was a recognition from the Taliban spokesman, made very explicit by him, that they want to have good relationships with the outside world. They want to not only have good relations with their neighbors, but also with the broader international community. And they know that if they want that enforcing their strict, brutal, severe interpretation of Islam, where they cut off people's hands, where they don't allow women out on the street without a male escort, where they forbid girls from attending school, that all of those things are not going to work if the Taliban wants to have relations with the West in particular. And so I think that we saw today a real clear-headedness about the reality that they have to change. Whether they can do it is the question.
Remains to be seen. Okay, finally, President Biden said yesterday that he stands by his decision, very forcefully, he made that clear, to withdraw U.S. troops. Where does the administration go from here?
Well, they don't have a ton of leverage. I mean, it's quite clear that their mission has radically shrunk just in the last 72 hours, from one of supporting an Afghan government that doesn't exist anymore to just trying to get their people out, trying to get U.S. citizens out, trying to get embassy personnel out, trying to get the Afghans who assisted the United States through 20 years of war out. And that is really the focus of American efforts right now and the administration's efforts right now. And the broader question of what happens to Afghanistan, what happens to the nation beyond the airport where the U.S. is trying to exert its control. I think that in many respects, there's a bit of a shrugging of the shoulders from Washington saying, we don't have a lot of ability to influence that anymore. Certainly, there are things that the U.S. can do around the edges, but ultimately, the U.S. is not in power in Afghanistan anymore, which it was for 20 years, and it had a friendly government there. It does not anymore, and that is a radical departure for that part of the world.
Griff Witte of The Washington Post, thank you. We appreciate your insights.
Thanks, Tanya.